Good evening and welcome to the State of Scottish Football here on A State of Mind. You know the drill. We're currently live across Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and I'm not sure about Twitter. Twitter has been playing up recently, but I don't think we're live there. But as I mentioned, there are plenty of other ways to get involved. And you should get involved because we're getting to talk about a Scottish victory and previewing a massive game for Scotland. Thankfully, though, I'm not alone to discuss it. I am joined by David Smith. David, how are you doing?
Very well, Stu. Happy after Friday, but we need to keep this fine momentum going, and here's hoping for 6 points out of 6 this evening.
Definitely. Well, we'll just jump straight into it because we beat Moldova 2-0 on Friday night. It was a really good performance at the end of the day. Before we get into specifics about the game, just overall, how happy were you with the performance and, of course, the result that followed it?
Yeah, it was a good performance, good result, and everything that you needed to. It was a good marriage as far as Scotland were concerned. I mean, getting the goal earlier on was really good from our point of view, and then we killed the game off later on. But also, we had the right look at times within the game as well, because Craig Gordon had that penalty save, and then Kieran Tierney brushing up the rubbish by putting the ball out for a corner kick to Moldova. If Moldova go and score that goal later on in the game, it's potential finger biting in the last remaining stages of that match on Friday evening. So, no, a very good performance and a very good result, and we did everything we needed to do in order to go and get the result. And there was some really good performances, and it's a step in the right direction to where we're at just now in terms of we're getting these big results when it matters.
Definitely. I look at the Holland-Montenegro game, and Holland were 2-0 up in that towards the 80th minute, and then Montenegro came back into it to draw 2-2. And it just made me think instantly about how big that penalty could have been for Moldova had they scored it, and just how important both Gordon's save were and Tierney's tackle, which we'll get onto in a minute. But it's the other fullback who I want to start with, because Nathan Patterson has scored his first goal for Scotland, and people have been wanting him to get into the national team for a long time. Obviously, we've struggled on the right back situation. We've been absolutely blessed with left backs, but we've been scraping the barrel really to find a right back. And a few of them have come through at once, but it's been Nathan Patterson who's really been taking the fans' headlines. How did you make of his performance overall? Obviously, the goal was a fantastic take on his weaker foot, but I thought throughout the game he was linking up really well with Mcginn and just getting up and down that right-hand side, offering a real threat from the other side, which we've lacked recently from a Scottish point of view.
I had a feeling he was going to be a big player for us on Friday, Stu, and if I'm going to be honest with you, I made the point to Regan on the show Thursday evening that I felt his tenacity and his ability to get on the ball could have been purposeful for us, and it proved to be that. I mean, he got to some really good areas, and that proved to be successful with that first goal, getting into the byline and then swinging the ball across for us to go and open the score in there. So that was pretty good for itself. And then Patterson just kept going in that very good runs, tenacious runs all evening, and he was a real joy to watch as far as I was concerned. And I made the point that I think Stephen O'Donnell needs to come in tonight. Obviously, we'll wait for the team lines to come out shortly. But I do feel that we need a defensive diligence about our play tonight, whilst and obviously Patterson's suspended, and I've came on here and raised a lot of glamour and clamour about our ability and our attacking prowess in certain areas of the park, and I do feel that Roster would replicate that to an extent. But also, I look at this by saying I do feel O'Donnell needs to go and start tonight. But on the other side, I looked at Friday by saying Moldova were there to be exploited at the back, and Patterson was definitely a huge figure in that, and it was just rather unfortunate that he went up and picked up that booking on Friday evening, because if it wasn't, I think he'd have been a mainstay in this team tonight. But these things happen in football, fortunately, and we need to. I'm not just saying this on behalf of Patterson, but I'm saying this on behalf of other players, that we need to be vigilant of our operations and the way we conduct ourselves tonight, despite it being a big game, because we've got a lot of players in bookings that could potentially miss the playoff semi-final.
Definitely. And while we're live tonight, we could potentially get the Scotland lineup, and we will discuss that to see. I think the right back position is definitely one of the most interesting spots. But in our system that we play in the 3-5-2, obviously a lot of our creativity comes from the width. And quite often we've seen Tierney and Robertson overlapping on multiple occasions, and we know how good they both are. But in this game against Moldova, how good was it to see a presence down that right-hand side, just to actually have almost another plan, if you will?
Yeah, Daniel, just to clarify, I know you're raising the point in this comment section. He is suspended for this evening, and that's the point I'm making. I do feel that it ultimately is between Ralston and O'Donnell to start, but if I'm Steve Clarke right now, I feel O'Donnell needs to start just for his defensive diligence more than anything else. Not to say that Rawson's not a bad defender. It's just I feel O'Donnell's the better to adapt to the situation. But back on the original point, and yeah, Tierney was Patterson was a really good point in terms of a good link in terms of getting the ball wasn't the midfielders or indeed into attackers, but also we've been really good in the past in terms of using that Tierney and Robertson's system, and it's worked a treat, I mean. We didn't have to use it too much on Friday evening, but also I look at this by saying we didn't really need it, to be honest. I mean, Patterson was enjoying too much, a lot of good rhythms and a lot of good, successful, positive play about him on Friday evening. And Robertson and Tierney, I'll be honest with you, as much as they were as pivotal on Friday evening, they'll both have a key part to play this evening in the question. And you look at Tierney and say he didn't do a lot of the attacking play, but I think we could all circumvent that by the fact that he did his defensive work in terms of after that penalty on Friday evening. So I feel both Robertson and Tierney will be key for Scotland this evening. And sometimes when one or two players have an off game, not that I'm saying they did have an off game, but when one or two players aren't exactly at their exact best, but we still get the job done, it's a sign of where we're at, and it's a sign of mentality that's creeping into the Scotland team, which is a very positive mentality indeed.
Definitely. JP has just brought me on to my next point perfectly there, talking about Billy Gilmore, because Billy Gilmore, similarly to Nathan Patterson, was one of these young players coming through who a lot of Scotland fans for a long time were just left scratching their heads as to why they weren't actually getting a game for Scotland, because similarly to Patterson, as Gilmore came into the lineup, he just took to it like a duck to water, to be honest. He was absolutely fantastic. What did you make of his performance against Moldova? Because coming out of this game, Gilmore's not been one of the names who has been widely talked about. You know, we'll talk about Tierney later, Gordon, Shay Adams, and of course Nathan Patterson, who we've just discussed. It wasn't really a game for Billy Gilmore to be getting the headlines, but is that perhaps a good thing? The fact that we're now almost being accustomed to these performances from Billy Gilmore. You know, he's putting in these 7 or 8 out of 10s constantly, and he's just going about doing his business and not really being noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of Gilmore, I mean, I felt it was important that he got put under the radar a little bit. He's been absolutely brilliant for both club and country. I mean, he got loaned out to Norwich, and understandably so. Tensions time between Gilmore and Farke, but obviously Farke's moved off that football club. Dean Smith has took the Norwich job today, and I think he can get a lot of good things out of Gilmore. I'm going to speak about the club very briefly here. He made Jack Grealish mould into the player he is, and he's very good in terms of midfield counterparts. I mean, he did John McGinn's not a similar play to Jack Grealish, but what you'll get from John McGinn is you'll get a leadership from him, and also you get a tenacity to get forward, and also an experience from John McGinn. But back at the original point about Gilmore, he had a very quiet game on Friday night, but I thought it was a very good thing because it allowed our white players or indeed our forwards to focus in the game and focus on their job in hand, because he'd have had a lot of attention based on the fact that he plays for a big club and obviously Chelsea, and the fact that he's done well at international level. So I feel it's a big thing in terms of the fact that he had a quiet game. But I think he'll come back in tonight, and I think he's got a big game under his stride. And if he can replicate the performances such as Wembley at the Euros and various other performances for club, I think we're on a winner here.
Definitely. I mean, Dean Smith is a lucky man. He's just managed John McGinn, and now he gets to manage Grant Hanley, Kenny McLean, and Billy Gilmore. You know, he's living the high life, so to speak. But going back to the goalkeepers now, Craig Gordon made a fantastic save early on in the match, and it followed a few chances. It was still 0-0 at this point when he touched the one onto the roof of the net. And we'd created a lot of chances earlier on in that game, and it looked as if this chance could potentially have been that banana skin. You know, how crucial is it that we have Craig Gordon to make those types of saves? Because if we concede there, who knows where the game goes, especially when we're not taking our chances up front. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, Craig Gordon's had that experience over the years. I mean, he's played for Scotland just short of 2 decades now, which is funny to think about, considering a goalkeeper's expiry date in terms of international appearances is usually a decade at most. So the fact that Craig Gordon's probably played just under 2 decades of international football for this country just goes to show that the mentality of Craig Gordon first and foremost, but also the fact that Craig Gordon has looked after himself his whole life in order for him to continue playing at the highest standards possible. and I encode that with club and country. I mean, it was very harsh to let go of Celtic at the time that he did, but he's replicating 5 performances for Hearts again, and for Scotland, he's putting in some instrumental performances, which is helping us get the outcomes that we perceive and pursue whenever Scotland are obviously in action. But yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of good goalkeepers lying in wait, but for now, we need to make sure we're getting the most out of Craig Gordon. I think we are, and Craig Gordon will keep these performances intact moving forward, because he keeps himself healthy, and also he keeps himself in a very good situation where he can obviously continue to do the things that he does on a regular basis for both club and country. And he's going to be a big player for us tonight, and he was a big player for us on Friday night. And if we can, because Denmark have got a lot of good forward-thinking players, and we need to be vigilant of that. And also with the fact that Grant Hanley isn't available tonight, it'll be interesting to see what the defensive three is. But I mean, with regards to Craig Gordon, brilliant shot stopper, and I'm pretty sure he'll be tested and challenged this evening.
Definitely. There's an interesting interview with Craig Gordon given, and Kasper Schmeichel, of course, Denmark's goalkeeper. We'll touch on the Denmark lineup later on as well today, and some of their available players. But it was quite interesting because Craig Gordon was talking about Schmeichel, and he mentioned that, he's now into his 30s, referring to Kasper Schmeichel. And it just made me laugh to think, Kasper Schmeichel himself is 35 and he seems like an old goalkeeper, and yet Craig Gordon is turning 39 in December, and yet the two of them are just full of praise for each other. It's absolutely great to see. But of course, what Craig Gordon did, probably the most notable action in that game, was saving a penalty. The second time we've saved a penalty on the 12th of November. Seems to be a good day for Scottish goalkeepers. How crucial was that save? Because as I previously mentioned, Holland were 2-0 up against Montenegro and they threw that away in the last 10 minutes of the game. This was a similar time. If we'd conceded there, it would have been 2-1. The nerves start to kick in. Scotland could potentially shake a little bit, and we could have come away with a draw from that game. So just how important was that save? And of course, we will touch on the Tierney tackle in a minute after.
I mean, the save first and foremost was vital. I mean, it was a poor penalty. Let's put that on record. But also, a penalty is there to be saved. And if Gordon wasn't proactive and reactive in the various situations that were on hand to him, then that ball probably goes to the back of the net. And indeed, in the dying stages of that game, there's a lot of finger biting and various other things. So. Yeah, I mean, Craig Gordon has been an instrumental figure for Scotland over the years, and he continues to do so. And we do need a big performance from him again tonight, as far as I'm concerned, because it is a big game in terms of the playoff permutations. I do hope that Scotland players, or indeed Scotland fans, don't come into this game tonight thinking, we need... it's a party, because I think it's far from it. I mean, it can easily treat it as a party, and it's very seldom parties take place on a Monday night, I may add. But what I would add is, if you're going to treat this like a party, then I don't understand why, because we've still got a lot of this is a big game for us tonight, and it's a big game in terms of trying to get a home playoff in the semi-final. And if we are going to get that home playoff semi-final that we very much desire, then we need a big performance. And I'm not just including Craig Gordon in that, I'm including other big players in that as well. But obviously, Craig Gordon's the player that faces the game on multiple occasions. He's the player that's kept Scotland in loads of games and helped Scotland to some big wins over the years as well.
Definitely. And of course, after he made this save, Moldova still had a great chance to score had it not been for Kieran Tierney making an unbelievable challenge to stop that. Quite often in a Scotland shirt, we're praising Tierney for going forward, even though he's in that back three, the overlapping he does with Robertson and the interlinking. But did he show everybody that he's a very capable defender as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was actually looking at the pictures and various media channels that actually cover the game, like Sky Sports and some of the newspapers and things like that. And what you found was the camera angles were that side, right? So you also find that the Moldova take the penalty. Tierney's nowhere near the initial picture in question. And then when Gordon saves it, it's a case of Tierney being proactive first and foremost, because he obviously understands that Gordon has just pulled off a massive save. But also alongside this, it's his ability to be intelligent and get to the ball first, and instead of that Moldova player in question, to obviously make sure we keep a clean sheet and, most importantly, all 3 points. And Tierney has been a massive player for Scotland over the years, and he played a massive part in the victory Friday evening.
Definitely. How crucial is Tierney as a whole to our back line? Because obviously we've got this left back dilemma, and it seems that Robertson has almost been favoured in the sense, he's the wing back, and I think when we have played with a back four, it's quite often Tierney who's been played as the right back, or he's been played at centre half, but I think that versatility is key. I think he's crucial to the way we play both defensively and in the build-up. And we've seen as well, when he's been missing, you go back to the Euros, obviously he was missing in the first game against the Czech Republic. You can see how big a difference he makes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have tried and tested Tierney in various positions, as you touched on there, such as right back and left back and centre half. But this philosophy and this system is integrated in Kieran Tierney more than anybody else, if I'm going to be honest with you. Just because we do have the defensive players in order for us to be organised on a regular basis and keep the clean sheets and get the wins that we desire. But also, alongside this, Kieran Tierney plays a massive part in terms of he allows an attacking versatility about his play, a defensive versatility about his play, but also he allows defensive structure about this play as well. And then obviously the 3 centre-halves in question, whether that's Suter, Hendry Tierney, or Hanley, Hendry Tierney, any permutation you like, it offers a good stepping stone for the midfielders and forwards to go and do their jobs, which I think helps massively. I mean, we've got a really good system at this precise moment in time where, although there was a lot of clamour on Friday, I'm just pointing out a good example here that a lot of clamour on Friday for Armstrong not to play, or Armstrong doesn't fit into the system. I could justify that because there was times on Friday where he could have done better in certain positions. But back onto your original point about Tierney, and he's been brilliant for Scotland. But also, for club in Arsenal, he has been playing centre-half on a couple of occasions, which has probably helped him mature into the left side of centre-half. I nearly got that wrong there. The left side of centre-half that he is today.
Definitely, and of course, well, speaking of playing in England, we've got Shay Adams, he's been struggling a little bit in a Scotland shirt. He's been in good form for Southampton, but he's not really been as effective for Scotland. Quite often it's Lyndon Dykes, who's the best on earth, by the way, who's getting the ball in the back of the net for Scotland. But finally, Shay Adams got back on the score sheet, and although it looked like a simple finish, I thought it was really good one touch. The whole game, obviously, he did put the ball in the back of the net early on, got waved off for offside. There was, I think Alan McCoy said it on commentary, he was taking too many touches at times and trying to do too much, but he eventually got the one-touch finish, assisted by Nathan Patterson. Just praising him again, because why not? He was fantastic. How important was that for Shay Adams to get on the score sheet from a Scotland shirt?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Shay Adams has been accustomed to maybe taking too many touches, which is maybe aggravated his goal tally for Scotland, and maybe made sure that he scored a lower tally than what he's capable of. I mean, Shay Adams on his day is a really good striker, but it is about accountability as far as I'm concerned. Maybe a bit of intelligence could do him the world of good as well. I mean, he's a really good player in terms of his hold-up play. He's got the ability to score a goal, like he did on Friday night. And I think Friday night showed a different side to Shay Adams, that he's got capability and to go and score one-touch finishes. I mean, it's a really good finish on Friday night. A lot of it was good lead up in the lead up to the goal. It was a really good partnership, and we got to a really good position. But overall, it was a really good from Shay Adams to go and hit a one-touch finish and probably a very important goal indeed for Scotland's World Cup ambitions. So very good finish, and Shay Adams needs to probably go around more goals to his game now. He's capable of it, but it's all about getting a bit of thrust and a bit of confidence in his stride on an international level.
Definitely. And, well, of course, I mentioned there Lyndon Dykes, his normal strike partner, was absent from this game, as was Scott McTominay, who had a throat infection, as was Grant Hanley. 3 players who you would perhaps say would be regular starters for Scotland, but without the 3 of them, we were still able to pick up a 2-0 victory over Moldova. How important do you think that is as a squad, that even though we were missing a few key players, we were still able to use the options that we've got within the team, the likes of Cooper coming in, obviously there we mentioned Shay Adams, Stuart Armstrong coming into the lineup as well. How impressive is that we're still able to grind out these results, even though we are missing a few key players here or there?
Stuart, can I hold you for a minute here? I think we've got the team. Yes, we have the team.
We have the team indeed.
Craig Gordon, Stephen O'Donnell, Andy Robertson, John Suter, Tierney, John Mcginn, Carla Mcgregor, Shay Adams, Ryan Christie, Bill Gilmore, and Liam Cooper.
I'm okay with that. I think I'm okay with that. Lyndon Dykes definitely hasn't been risked for that one. That is, I'm pretty happy with that. What are your thoughts on the initial lineup there? Obviously, I think the biggest name to see in there is John Souttar.
Yeah, I'm happy that John Souttar's came in. It looks as though there'll be a back three of Souttar, Tierney, and Cooper. I'm not convinced about Liam Cooper, if I'm going to be brutally honest with you. It's just because I look at Liam Cooper and say he's had a lot of experience and he's playing at a really good level in England with Leeds, but also I look at this by saying we need a tried and tested approach this evening. And John Souttar coming in, it'll be a big game for John Souttar tonight because, I mean, he's been a player plagued by injuries. But also, I look at this by saying if we can get a good organisation about our play, I mean, I'm pretty sure Steve Clarke has probably worked on this internally, which is justifiable. But also, I touched upon Stephen O'Donnell there being a right wing back, and I do feel that Stephen O'Donnell was the right man for that because of his defensive due diligence that he delivers on a regular basis. And we touched about it off air, Stu. He's a big player in terms of whenever we have a big game in terms of Scotland. So I feel it's the right call putting in O'Donnell this evening. You'll obviously slaughter me for that, but Liam Cooper, I touched upon the fact that he needs to convince me, but also he has had some good performances, and he'll need a big performance this evening.
Definitely. Now, when I saw John Souttar was called into the team, my initial reaction was he might play against Moldova, but he'll have no chance against Denmark, given how good an opposition Denmark are and how John Souttar hasn't played for Scotland in over 2 years. But how much faith does that? How much does it show that? I'm getting my words jumbled up here. Steve Clarke has a lot of faith in John Souttar, basically, is what I'm trying to say, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as I touched upon, Souttar's been plagued by injuries, which has been rather unfortunate from his point of view. But Souttar's done really well for Hearts this year, and Steve Clarke will have a lot of trust and faith in the centre half this evening, especially with the system that we want to play. Going back to your last question about defenders and the fact that we played a makeshift team almost on Friday evening, that was a big thing for me. I mean, the fact that we've been accustomed to our usual system and a tried and tested system, which has worked to perfection. Fair play to Clarke on Friday evening because he kept this exact same system. It was just about changing players and fitting the right pieces in the jigsaw. As far as I'm concerned, the jigsaw was complete on Friday evening. We got players in very good positions, and Patterson starting was justified. Carla Mcgregor looked decent on Friday evening, and so was John Mcginn. We obviously got some good goals at the right times, and that helped towards the 2-0 victory. So overall, plenty of positives to take for Friday evening, and it does show that there's a togetherness and mentality rather than an individual there's a collectivity rather than individuality with regards to how we want to play, and also how players will mould into the setup, especially with the likes of, just for prime examples here, Jacob Brown and other players getting called up again. Jacob Brown for the first time, sorry, but other players getting called up again. So, yeah, full credit to everybody involved in a Scotland shirt, or indeed travelled to Moldova on Friday night. So, very, 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 very good performance and a very good result indeed.
Definitely. Well, before the team got announced there, I mentioned that Grant Hanley, Scott McTominay and Lyndon Dykes were missing against Moldova, and we still won that game. Neither of those three are starting again tonight. Jack Hendry's also come out, but looking at that 11, it's still pretty strong. Does that show that we're starting to build that strength and depth? We've got options should we miss a couple of players through injury or suspension like we are right now?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the bench, and you've got Xander Clark in there, John McLaughlin in there. I mean, that's two goalkeepers that could probably replace Craig Gordon once Craig Gordon decides to hang up the gloves. Defensively, you've got Anthony Ralston, you've got Ryan Porteous, and you've got Scott McKenna, three good defensive players. If I'm going to be honest with you, Porteous and McKenna need to justify if they can fit into the system. Porteous, I'll start by saying he has been on the colliding end of some tasty challenges, and he's had the repercussions of criticism, both indeed by the media and indeed on social media by members of the public and indeed football fans. Scott McKenna, he's doing well in a Nottingham Forest team that's improving under Steve Cooper. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets called upon at any given stage. Ralston have made the point that I think he's the best right back in Scottish football at this minute in time. I think Ralston was probably called up because obviously one, Patterson is obviously suspended for this evening, and two, there was probably the COVID implications because I think you've still get COVID tested before these type of games. So he probably would have been too soon for Moldova, and we had two right backs waiting in the wings anyway. Stuart Armstrong and David Turnbull, like I said, but Armstrong had a mediocre game on Friday night. So he's on the bench, but he is one of them players that you can look at and say could turn a game. Same with David Turnbull. There was a lot of clamour about Kevin Nisbet potential starting, and I think it's right call by Clark not to start Nisbet because as much as he's a really good forward, there's also the other side to this to suggest that he's not been firing on all cylinders for Scotland or indeed Hibs this season. And I can understand why Nisbet was indeed dropped for this evening's game in question. And then Kenny McLean, Jacob Brown and Lewis Ferguson, you look at them three players and say they could always have a pivotal saying how tonight's game is concluded. I mean, they're three really good players, and here's hoping if we do need to rely on the substitutes bench that they can come up and deliver the goods for us tonight.
Definitely. I think after John Souttar, in terms of whenever we've seen a Scotland team announced on social media, John Souttar was always crying out. People were crying out to get him in the team. I think the next most common name we saw this season was Tony Ralston, and I think completely justified. His form has been absolutely excellent, and he finally did make it into the Scotland team. He's on the bench tonight. I think he will get minutes. I'm not surprised he hasn't started. I'll ask you that in just a second, but I think he will get some game time tonight. I don't know whether it'll be a final 10 minutes, a final 20 minutes, but I'd expect him to at least come on and feature at some point. But as you said, we were discussing before the show, Stephen O'Donnell arguably has been one of the worst defenders in the Premiership this season. He's not been great, but in a Scotland shirt, he tends to save his best performances for the big games. You look at Wembley in the summer, he was absolutely fantastic. You look at the Serbia game over a year ago, he was brilliant again. Do you think this is one of those games where once again he can turn up and he can provide that defensive stability for Scotland?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're going to have to be wary of the fact that Denmark do like to bomb on forward, and they've got a lot of good players in the forward areas. I mean, what happened to, I know this is giving a very brief statement here, but what happened to Ericsson was obviously sad for everybody involved in the football community, but also Denmark got a lot of resurgence and a lot of urgency from that moment onwards with regards to the players and the setup that they have. I mean, they've got a lot of fantastic players in that Denmark side. It's going to be no easy game for Scotland this evening, and we need to be very, very wary of that. I mean, if we're going to get any result we needed to give us tonight, we've had to give us in the past, and if we can achieve the same outcomes as we did on Friday night and indeed in games so far in this group, then we're going to do very well for ourselves. I'm trying to get the Denmark team. I don't think it's been released yet, but
yeah, I do have it here if you want it.
Okay, I'll let you go ahead.
It is Schmeichel in goal, Vestergaard, Kjær, Christensen at the back, another Christensen and Daniel Vass at fullback, Jonsson, Melee at left wing back, Skov Olsen, Cornelius, and Brun Larsen are that's the Danish team for tonight. So I think they're also in a 3-5-2. So quite a similar setup to us. Obviously, their back three is really strong. A Champions League winner in there. I think Simon Kjær is in the Ballon d'Or list as well. He's been excellent for AC Milan. So there's a lot of talent throughout that team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've got a lot of quality, a lot of talent, and that showed in the last game that Denmark played Scotland. And Denmark have a no fear mentality. They're very similar to Scotland in a way. I mean, they've got a fighting mentality about them. They've got a spirit within their camp, and they'll be one of the sides that are expected to go and do well, especially after the exploits in the semi-finals, getting to the semis of the Euros. Semis of the Euros reached?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
England did 2-1, yeah.
Okay, Denmark, obviously. Yeah, they've got some good players, and I don't just mean good players in the forward areas, I mean good players in the defensive areas as well. They've got Christensen at Chelsea, Schmeichel has been there and done it with Leicester. I mean, it's going to be a tricky game for us tonight, but we've got a good team set and a good setup in our stride tonight. And if we can, I think the first it's a everyday hypnosis, but I think the first goal is vital tonight for whoever gets it.
Definitely. When we've spoken about the defence there and Kasper Schmeichel of Denmark, how strong they are. Denmark have only conceded one goal in this entire qualifying tournament in 9 games, and it only came in the last one against the Faroe Islands. How much of a concern is that for Scotland to see that strong defence? Because I think one of the biggest criticisms we've seen of Steve Clarke is that we don't play very attacking football, and sometimes we do struggle to break down teams. And we're coming up against one of, if not the best defensive side in Europe at the moment.
Yeah, but I would argue that by saying it's probably the best attacking philosophy we've played in a long time, if I'm going to be honest with you. Only the Gordon Strachan days I would accept with regards to that. I mean, when we played under Strachan, we played some really good attacking football then. But under Clarke, yeah, there's maybe an attacking scrutiny, and understandably so. But also, I look at this by saying we are getting wins and we're getting goals. I mean, Clarke has done it all his career. I mean, Steve Clarke, he has his critics, but also I look at this by saying he's also got a channel and an ability about him where he will go and grind out results against some of the big sides of the world and indeed in Europe. And he's doing the same here with Scotland. He was the number one choice for me when he took on the Scotland job, especially after doing well. Kilmarnock and do well at other clubs down in England. But also, yeah, he's not the striker that will go and play all-out attack football, and that does frustrate Scotland fans. But what you will get from Clarke is you'll get players that will have a never say die attitude about them. And that's proven to be a very good omen indeed for our country.
Definitely. There's one battle, just seeing the two lineups there, that I'm thinking in my head I'm getting really interested for now, and that is going to be, I think we've spoken about more than anybody so far, Stephen O'Donnell, and it's going to be up against Johan Mela, who of course plays for Atalanta, the left wing back. He was absolutely fantastic at the Euros. You know, he's right-footed, but he plays on that left-hand side. Some of the deliveries he puts in have been ridiculous. You know, just he's I'd say one of the best wing-backs currently in Europe on form. We've seen it at his club, seen it at international level. He's absolutely fantastic. And from that point of view, I think I can completely understand why Stephen O'Donnell has been picked, you know, coming up against somebody of that talent. And especially if Bruno Larson is also going to be playing on that left-hand side up front, there's going to be a lot of threat down that side. Having somebody like Stephen O'Donnell can definitely help that. But do you think that's going to be one of the battles that we'll see quite a lot down our right-hand side?
Yeah, but one thing I would say about O'Donnell is he has an adrenaline that's enriched in him when it comes to big games. I mean, he's probably, the bigger the game, the bigger the magnitude and the bigger the performance you'll get from O'Donnell. And that's the bottom line here. I mean, yeah, I mean, this is a very, very big game indeed for O'Donnell. And I mean, I'd like to know this, but I'd be interested to see if Jack Grealish is still in his back pocket after Wembley, because I mean, he was absolutely brilliant in that night in question when he played against Grealish. But also, yeah, he's capable of doing that when he's up against bigger players. When he's up against bigger players, he's got that capability to go and do well. I mean, when Scotland played Austria, I spoke about his defensive due diligence, but also against Austria, he really scored in that evening in question, which surprised a lot of Scotland fans indeed. But he showed great awareness and great tenacity to get up that park and nearly go and score there. And Austria were a really good side in that evening in question. But Steve Clarke, to his due, got the assignment absolutely spot on. And Steve Clarke does meticulous preparation, and he'll thought about this long and hard. And getting O'Donnell in that area will probably prove to be a really successful area for him. And we need to be reliant on the wing back areas this evening in question, because I mean, O'Donnell, we relied on it Friday night when we played Moldova. I mean, we're really good in the midfield area in terms of the players we'll have available this evening, but also we've been really good and really successful in the wing back areas, and that's going to have to be a pretty key for us tonight in order to go and get a result.
Daniel Max making a point in the comments there about Stuart Armstrong, saying he thought he played well and he's been unlucky not to get into the team, and I think that's fair. I thought Stuart Armstrong did have a good game against Moldova, and I think Stuart Armstrong's one of these players who's kind of been let down by the way Scotland play. It's a bit difficult for him to find his feet in the 3-5-2 setup. Do you think he's a bit unlucky not to come into the team tonight? Or to keep his place in the team, I should say, sorry.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we need to be reliant on playing out wide tonight, as far as I'm concerned, because I mean, it's an area where I feel Denmark could get exposed, but also I'm looking at this by saying if we're playing it through the middle too much, we might be in trouble. So yeah, we need to be reliant on the wing back areas tonight. I mean, I got absolutely bang on the Thursday night when I says that we needed to be reliant on Patterson and the wide players. We maybe didn't do that more successfully in Friday evening, if I'm going to be honest with you. We did get some pretty good fortunes in terms of when we got the goals that came through some really good channels and really good areas. But I'd like to see a bit more, if I'm going to be honest with you. And I feel Armstrong would be a pivotal figure with regards to that. But also, I look at this by saying Armstrong has done really well, but also there is the $100 million question whether he fits into the system. And if he does fit into the system, where about? Because there is a lot of quality players that wouldn't have probably possessed about 2 or 3 years ago. But also, yeah, Armstrong is a really good player, and he has been in and out of the Southampton team of late, and he's shown there that he's capable of putting in some big performances. And for Armstrong, he's a player that did well at various clubs he's been at, United, Celtic, Southampton. And with Celtic, he was really good, especially under Brendan Rodgers, where he got into really good positions and then bang, tucked away the fine finish. And obviously the permutations behind Armstrong leaving Celtic wasn't exactly kind to the Celtic supporters, I may add, but also Armstrong was really good in that the leading spell that they had in terms of getting into key channels and exploiting opposition defenders. And that's what we need to do this evening. I feel playing through the middle is a gamble because, I mean, Denmark have a really accustomed, and as you touched upon earlier, a really organised and experienced defensive unit. So we need to exploit in the right areas, and Armstrong can feel very grieved not to be in the team this evening.
Definitely. Of course, I don't think Højbjerg is playing today, which I think is a really big boost for Scotland, of course, in the midfield. But the man who came in for Stuart Armstrong was Ryan Christie, and I really like Ryan Christie. I think for Scotland, he's one of these players who has a moment of magic in him. You know, he's one of these players who, when nothing's working from outside of the box, he can just bend one into the top corner. I mean, fair enough, he'll maybe try about 3 times, and 2 of them will go flying over the top. But he can produce moments of magic, and some of the assists he's had already at Bournemouth in a short spell there have been phenomenal. Bournemouth are flying in the Championship as well at the moment. But Christie has sort of lost his place in the Scotland setup. You know, he scored the famous goal last year against Serbia, fantastic from outside of the box. But it seems that Shay Adams and Lyndon Dykes are now the preferred front two, of course, both naturally strikers. Do you think tonight's an opportunity for Christie to sort of remind people what he's capable of and why he should be starting for Scotland?
Yeah, I think so, because he had a poor performance in the Faroes, and him getting the booking at the Faroes was actually a thank you to the fans in a way, because some of the fans were happy that it was actually raised during either during or after the game that indeed Christie was going to be suspended for that game on Friday evening. But for Ryan Christie, he's been a big player for both club and the country over the years. He delivered that hilarious Sky Sports interview after the game on the 12th of November last year. We all have a tear in our eye after that one. We still do to this very day, I may add. But also, Christie, he's a big player, and his tenacity and his ability to open up defenders will be key tonight. And I think this is a big game for Ryan Christie. Try and get an assist or try and play a pivotal role in this game and silence a few doubters.
Definitely. And of course, that interview that he gave last year, I think that was just about every single Scotland fan after that game, just letting the emotions come out. It was fantastic. And Shay Adams has kept his spot tonight. And I think that's really good. Obviously, we mentioned that he scored there, but do you think we could see somebody like Jacob Brown get an introduction tonight, or perhaps Lyndon Dykes comes on later on in the game? We've got those options should we need them. Should we, touch wood, it doesn't happen, but should we perhaps fall behind, or if we are in the situation where 0-0 towards the 80th, 70th minute, we can bring somebody off?
Yeah, I feel for the game is becoming a bit stretched, and indeed we are in a close position, such as a 0-0 or 1-0 to them, or 1-0 loss, or whatever permutation it is. I do feel we're in a position where we need to maybe add an attacking player or replace like for like. But also, I'd look at this by saying if we are 0-0 in the dying stages of the match, I hope Clark doesn't go for a smash and grab approach to this, because I mean it is a big game for Scotland in terms of permutations for playoffs moving forward. I mean, we do look at this by saying it is a massive game, and we do look at this by saying, yeah, we would like to get a couple of early goals, but also we're wary and vigilant of the fact that we are playing very dangerous opposition this evening, and Denmark are a really, really good side, and we need to be wary of the fact that if they score first, we need to be proactive in our approach and make sure that we don't just go and get a panic, or don't have a panic mentality about us or a knee-jerk reaction to our play. We need to make sure that we're being patient and robust in our approach and try to get some sort of result will be good for us tonight. 3 points would be a massive bonus, But also, it's a Carla Mcgregor expression here of must not lose.
Definitely, and you've brought me perfectly on there with Carla Mcgregor, because once again we've got Carla Mcgregor, John Mcginn, and Billy Gilmore, and I think this is the midfield is an area that we've never been able to pinpoint for Scotland. We're constantly changing it and throwing it around in the last few years, talking about who should come in, who should play where. We've seen John Mcginn plays an 8, we've seen him play as a 6, playing as a 10. We've seen Stuart Armstrong get thrown in there. We've seen Scott McTominay play there occasionally, Ryan Jack, but it seems that we finally have a nailed-on midfield 3, and I absolutely love it. I think we've got just about everything you want in the midfield there. You've got the goal threat of John Mcginn, you've got the worker in Carla Mcgregor, and you've got Billy Gilmore, who can just pick up the ball and zing it everywhere. There's a good band of leadership there as well. I think John Mcginn is the vice-captain at Aston Villa. I think I saw that recently. Carla Mcgregor's obviously the captain of Celtic, right down there in the spine of the team. How impressive is our midfield at the moment, and how happy are you to having established a set in stone midfield 3? And it's the classic, if it ain't broken, don't fix it, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was one thing. Clark changed a few things in the midfield area for the Pharaohs game, and it nearly went back to to bite us in the bum, so to speak. I mean, we didn't play McGregor. There was a turgidness about our play in the midfield area that evening in question. But I think you noticed the Friday evening, as much as we were using the wide players, we were also using the free midfield. And the free midfield for us on Friday evening were dominant in their approach play, but also dominant in their expression play as well. And their body language seemed very, very, very positive. And McGinn is a top player for this country. And no one, somebody's actually raised the point in the comment section saying no one in ACSOM has actually mentioned McGinn. Well, I'll give you a John Mcginn special. He's obviously what's his name? The meatball. Meatball,
yeah.
Meatball.
He's better than Zidane as well, if anybody's interested.
We've got McGinn. Super John Mcginn.
McGinn is also one of my personal favourites.
Yeah, but I mean, John McGinn's a key player for us tonight, and he has been a key player for us across the Euros, but also he's been a key player under Steve Clarke's tenure. I mean, he's delivered some big moments for us. I touched upon the fact earlier on that his experience and his leadership is massive, and that'll be the same situation tonight. There's no getting away from it. He's a massive player, and I think he'll get a wee bit of impetus from the fact that this is a whole different dimension to Scotland this evening. This is probably Scotland's toughest, but also most competitive game we'll have in a very, very long time. We've had games where we've slipped up, or indeed results just haven't went our way in previous times. But in terms of the magnitude of this game, it's a massive game, and John Mcginn will play a massive part. He maybe doesn't get the recognition for some of the work he does, but what you will get from John Mcginn is you'll get a stability about him, and that's the most important thing. And also, we need to get this point in here. Rawson has stepped up and has been class, deserves his cap, but he wouldn't start. But give the boy credit. I have made the point, young man. I think he's the best right back in Scottish football right now. There's no better accolade than that. I mean, I see it in my front of my own eyes at Dents Park last Sunday. I thought he was fantastic.
He has been absolutely excellent. And I think he does deserve a cap of some form today, whether that's the last 10 minutes or so on and so forth. But going back to John Mcginn there, what Mcginn offers is these goals out of nowhere. You know, I previously spoke about it with Ryan Christie, but John Mcginn always seems to be our biggest goal threat. You know, he scored more goals for Scotland under Steve Clarke than any other player, despite being in the midfield. And you think about some of the strikes, you know, the one against Israel where he takes it on his left foot and he curls it into the top corner is phenomenal. The bicycle kick against Austria, he's always coming up with the big goals. And is that important to have in your midfield, goals from deep, that sometimes when your strikers aren't performing or when you can't quite break down a defence, you've got that threat from midfield as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got 3 fantastic midfield players, but also we've got a support network in terms of if we need to be reliant on the bench, if the system's not working, or indeed we need a different dimension to our play. Then we've always got players on the bench that can go and turn a game by the scruff of the head. So scruff of the neck, sorry. So yeah, we've got a lot of options. We've got a lot of strength in depth right now, which is massively important in terms of the way we want to play and also the way that we want to go and get results. I mean, this system has been the best system we've had probably since Strachan, if I'm going to be honest with you. We've probably not had this system, regardless of Strachan, for a very, very, very long time. And we've had a lot of permutations in the past where we've played very defensive football, and it's been painful to watch. But this time around, we're getting a lot of balance in that play. We're getting a lot of balance in terms of the midfield, and the midfield has been absolutely superb for me. I mean, you're getting Gilmore that can go and score goals on a decent enough basis. Mcginn the same. McGregor is a bit more deeper, but what you will get from McGregor is you'll get a stability about his play. He's really good in terms of ball retention, ball playing. He could do everything that's required from a midfield player. So we've got a lot of characteristics about our team, but we've also got a lot of balance about our midfield area as well. So yeah, there's a lot to be happy about. There's a lot to be positive about at this precise moment in time. But also there is a lot to look at by saying if we can get the right balance and if we can get the right purpose in our play, we can go and kill the game and get at least 1 point, if not 3, this evening.
Definitely. And I know this point gets made constantly by Scotland fans, and I think rightly so, that Billy Gilmore hasn't really been playing very much for Norwich recently. I mean, it may change with Dean Smith coming in charge now, but even though Billy Gilmore hasn't been getting the regular minutes, he has started the past 2 games for Scotland. Is that quite reassuring, the fact that he has kept his place in the national team, even though he's not getting it at club level at the moment? And do you think that's due to the fact that he's got that credit in the bank? You know, we've seen how well he can perform in a Scotland shirt and just how important he is to the side as a whole.
I feel having a wee bit of a sabbatical has probably did Gilmore the world of good, if I'm going to be honest with you. And I look at this by saying he's had a bit of a rest. He's had a bit of a recuperation period, even though he didn't really need one, to be honest. And it's came back in and done him the world of good. I mean, he's came in and had some good performances for Scotland in the recent times and in the past. And also, he was really good and really solid and Friday evening in Moldova. And I think I'm quietly confident he can go and put in a very good performance this evening. I think it's a game for Billy Gilmore. It's a game for him where he can go and seize the game and he can go and exploit Denmark at the right opportunities, the right times. It is a game where he can go and try and go for different avenues. It is a game tonight where we can rest on our laurels a little bit, not too much, I may add, but we can rest on our laurels because we have qualified for the playoffs. There is the permutations and the potential luxury of qualifying for the playoffs, but also we have a fantastic opportunity to try 1 or 2 different things, but also try and get a result. So for me, it's the perfect game for Billy Gilmore this evening.
Definitely. And I'll just touch on the final of our Holy Trinity in midfield. And yes, I am going to call them that for now. And it's Carla Mcgregor. And for me, I think he's our unsung hero at the moment. I think he's that player who doesn't get the praise in the Scotland shirt. But for me, he's one of the most important players by far on that pitch. We saw that in the Faroe Islands when he didn't start. We just looked so disjointed. We just looked like we couldn't function. You know, I think he's that glue. I think he brings leadership. I think he brings that tenacity. His work on and off the ball, I think, is terrific. It's quite hard to sum up, but how important is he in that Scotland shirt?
Yeah, you've nailed the arrow on the head there. I mean, he's a really good player. He is a deeper player compared to like Mcginn and Gilmore, but what you will get from McGregor is an accountability and a leadership about him that he probably wouldn't have gotten in the past. His mentality has changed dramatically. I mean, he's been in situations for both club and country in the past where he's had various setbacks, but what he has done is he's had a brilliant resurgence and a brilliant response to this point. I think the 1 a.m. phone calls to his mum has probably done him the world of good because there used to be a lot of brutal phone calls between him and his mother, I read recently. But as it's just been touched upon there, he is a deep line playmaker. He is the Scottish Xavi, as it's just literally been touched upon there. But he is that player that will probably get you out of a situation where you're not expecting to get anything out of that situation. And yeah, we've got the players that fit around Carl McGregor, and Carl McGregor will need he'll need a big game tonight. If he can get a big game, I think it's half the battle. And if we can get a big game out in the midfield 3, it goes a long, long way in terms of trying to get the result required.
Definitely. Of course, the Scottish Yava, I think of a lot of different midfielders I'd love to compare him to. And if he scores tonight, maybe just give him the Scottish Zidane or something along those lines. But the final player I want to touch upon is perhaps the most important for the team, and it's the captain, who we haven't really said a thing about yet, Andy Robertson. Of course, he is our left wing back. He's probably the best player we have, pound for pound. But he's not always performed in a Scotland shirt, and quite a lot of people actually suggest that Tierney should be played at left back if we were to go into a back four. But for me, I think Robertson has been fantastic. I think it's a different role that he plays for Scotland to what he does at club level, of course, with the back four, back five, and just a different calibre of player. But what have you thought of Robertson's recent performances, and do you think tonight is a game that he can really show up, and put in a captain's performance, so it were?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not the biggest game Andy Robertson will play in a Scotland jersey. Also, I look at this by saying it is a massive game in terms of permutations for playoffs. It is a big game in terms of Andy Robertson looking to go and reignite himself in a Scotland jersey to an extent, because, I mean, his performances could be a bit more improved, but also you've got to be understanding and conscious of the fact that he has played a lot of football recently for Liverpool. And he is a man that will play a lot of games because of the player he is. But also, he is that player that he understands that he is a pivotal figure. I mean, in terms of the Euros, he showed a professionalism that others might not have shown as being Scotland captain. I mean, it was a big duty for him in the Euros this year, because he was the first captain in 23 years in terms of leading a country to a major competition or a major tournament for that matter. But also, he's done a lot for this country, and if he can get a big game tonight, it'll be a big weight off his shoulders a little bit, because, I mean, he has been getting that bit of pressure and that bit of criticism from the Scotland support, but a bit of defensive diligence, but also an ability to get forward and hit an illustrious 30-yard effort will go a long way to rectifying a few critics.
Definitely. And, well, we have got our playoff place secured. That's what our 2-0 victory over Moldova ensured. We have got that safety net, if you will. We know that we don't necessarily have to win tonight, but if we can get a result, we can be seeded and we can get potentially a much easier tie. No tie is easy at this stage in football. I understand that. But in terms of the quality of opposition, we saw last night Serbia winning against Portugal. Portugal are now one of the teams who we can potentially face. Sweden or another. Later on tonight, we'll find out whether Holland, Turkey or Norway fall into that category as well. So there are a lot of good teams we could come up against. How important is it tonight in this game that we do get something from it, that we do potentially, even if it's just a draw, how much of a difference that could make if we could get seeded? Because another teams who have qualified, there's somebody like North Macedonia. If you offer a Scotland fan, would you rather have Portugal or North Macedonia? There's only one answer there.
I'll roll back the archives by saying I think winning at Serbia was a massive springboard for us, because it was a game in which nobody knew expected Scotland to go out and actually pick up the result that ultimately got us a place into the Euros. So we've been eclipsed and encapsulated in recent times and previously, for that matter, the fact that we've struggled in terms of getting big results when it mattered, especially in the business end of group stage games that we've been involved in. But Serbia was an absolute real springboard in terms of getting things back on track and getting us back into major competitions, which we've been very much accustomed to over the past years or so. But also, I look at this by saying, if we can go and get a deserved result tonight, which will ultimately get us a home draw in the semi-final, it will give us much needed home advantage. So we've got a compromise where we have a mentality where we can do well both home and away. It's actually funny because there's been a lot of teams at club level that have become accustomed to doing well where there's been no fans, but doing not so well when there's no fans. And also, I look at this by saying Scotland have got the balance right. I mean, when fans we're a very expectant fan base. I mean, when things don't go well, we're critical and justifiably so. But also, I look at this by saying, on the other side, we look at this by saying, if we also play without fans, yeah, there'll still be critics out there, understandably so. But there was also a pressure-free environment about the Scotland side last year. But what we've also done is, whenever there has been fans, we've also allowed the environment to grow, but also allow the environment in terms of the fine momentum that we have continue to grow as well. And by the way, Regan is on Wednesday and Thursday this week. So he's not on tonight, he's not on tomorrow, but the big man will be on Wednesday and Thursday. So I hope we get some very good viewing figures for that, gents and girls.
I hope that we're talking about a Scotland victory over Denmark as well for those shows. But you mentioned it there, the home tie, and it's the classic cliche in football, the 12th man. But how big of a difference can it be to Scotland to have the home fans, to have that Hampden crowd? You know, we saw recently against the Israel game, just how great the atmosphere was at that stadium. How big of a difference can it make to these players?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. We've had a lot of big games over the years, but also before COVID, we were due to play Israel in the semi-final, which was expected to be sold out. And we've had a lot of, ever since then, when crowds have came back, we've had a lot of games which had sell-out crowds and really added to the atmosphere. I mean, the game in question where we beat Israel 3-2 was also it was a brilliant atmosphere that evening in question. They really were the 12th man that evening in question. I mean, they really did rally Scotland onto victory. Scotland have everybody involved, everybody in the country, has really got a bit of togetherness ever since that result, and that's been the thing. We needed that togetherness in order for us to go and grow and continue to be the fine country that we are. And here's hoping we can continue that tonight, because I'm led to believe it's another sellout crowd, which is very good going for a Monday evening, I may add, especially after coronavirus and the fact that people have had implications such as losing jobs and the financial implications that come with a pandemic such as this. So fair play to every Scotland fan that's going to this game tonight, because I mean, it is some going, and it does need a lot of commitment to go and follow your country on a regular basis, because with the exception of winter months, you've got a game pretty much every month during the football calendar. So fair play to everybody that's going to this game tonight, and here's hoping you can be that 12th man, raise the roof, and come on, Scotland.
Definitely. And just before I get your predictions, just one final thing to touch on in this game. You know, you previously mentioned about how we got the togetherness from that result against Serbia, which was the biggest game under Steve Clarke, one of Scotland's biggest games for years. You look back to the summer where we came up against England at Wembley, that was a massive game as well. And in both of those games, I think the team performed. Is that a good sign coming into tonight against a tough opposition like Denmark, that we've seen this team and it's almost a been there, done that? We can get up for these big occasions. You know, the team can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not just saying that primarily in Steve Clarke either. I'm saying that based on games we've had over the years as well. I mean, we were a Stuart Armstrong punt up the park away from beating England a few years ago. We were sorry for mentioning that, but we've also had instances in the past where we've had some big games either at Hampden or indeed in other venues around Europe where we've came away and got some very, very big results, which has been a change, transition in mentality, and it's only been a very, very strong thing from a Scottish point of view. And also, I must say before I finish on this question by saying, we'll just get it up here. I'll try to get it up for you. It was just about how Regan Stevenson has the best pad on a Celtic state of mind.
Fair enough there. Yeah, and then Kevin Graham there in the comments as well. They're saying, "Come on, Scotland." I think that's how every single Scotland fan is feeling. You know, there's less than an hour till kickoff now. Getting giddy with excitement is absolutely excellent. And as I said there, the game kicks off at 7:45. I hope everybody can tune in. I hope Scotland can get a result. And I'll just quickly put you on the spot a little bit here. What's your prediction for tonight?
I've touched upon the fact it's a must not lose game. I'm going to go for one each.
I'm gonna go for a 2-1 Scotland. It's not often I do actually predict a Scotland victory in a game like this, but I am feeling it tonight, and hopefully the Scotland players are as well. And well, we'll be back again same time tomorrow at 6:00 to hopefully, touch wood, be discussing a Scotland victory, a famous Scotland victory, but a Scotland victory would be absolutely fantastic, or at least a draw, not another defeat. That would be a little bit upsetting. But I'd like to thank David for joining me tonight. I'd like to thank everybody for interacting with us. And as I said again, we'll be back same time tomorrow here on A State of Mind with the State of Scottish Football. Cheers for now.